You are in a roundabout way saying that is it true that a kindness unwanted is an unkindness?
Yes.
Precisely. Well, call it what you want. Depends on who it is that's doing what it is. If it's something that's doing beyond doing, then it's kindness, whether anybody interprets it as such or not. Making water flow for, let's say, an area in some region where there are problems, right, with accessing water, that's a kindness, but the person who's doing it is not concerned about the kindness or unkindness. Something that's got to be done. There is that side of it. Something that's got to be done. Some people are the way they are, and they're given to be that way. In certain conditions, relative to what we were talking about politically speaking earlier, certain situations create the right conditions for the best to come out of a person. That's a possibility. People in combat had no idea they had a certain level of courage until they were under fire. Or put to task in a certain way. We're not just our superficial self. We're much more than that. That has to be understood as you judge people as you go through your life. Everyone has the potential of realization. What will it take to bring about some evidence of that? Sometimes acts of kindness can be helpful. And when such acts are accepted, right, as being kindnesses, there's an insight in that moment into the true nature of what our potential is, of what our true being is. So the heart just gives, so we know the nature of the heart. The heart is a giving side. And the mind is thinking and analyzing, judging, prejudging, and so on and so forth. And the heart is just giving. The irrational giving is, right? It's like the exhalation, it's not a thought process, but you have to release, you have to give. You have to give it out, give it back, take it in, and give. See? Receive and give. It's the law of the universe. At least for breathing beings. There may be non-breathing beings. There are different laws applied to them.
So, do good intentions always justify one's actions?
Good intentions?
Good intentions.
Justify one's actions? No, not necessarily. No intention justifies one's actions. It's a no intention. That's going back to the doing without doing. See? When no one gives, when no one's doing it, and it's happening. So it's unjustifiable, in a sense. It's unjustified. Graciousness. Unqualified, unconditional. See? All the same thing. You do what you have to do. And depending on what your condition is, your state of mind is, that determines to what degree it means anything, ultimately, to you. See? I mean, I've been in bar situations where somebody got socked in the nose because they were a certain way, and it was the best thing that ever happened to the person. Right? And then after they wake up, they say, oh, thank you, man, that really brought me back down to earth. I really needed that kind of kindness. Right.
Which means we're not necessarily equipped to always interpret actions as to whether or not they're kind.
You can say that whatever happens is right, supposedly and supposed to be happening. Whether you can make good or bad of it, it's up to the individual. But as I was saying during my last talk, that there's an agreed upon karma, an agreement about karma. Like a prior agreement to this life, which is based upon karma. You can't see it until you're in the say configuration of what it is, where the lesson is revealed to you. This is the mystery of life, and how you're working out karma. And from a spiritualist viewpoint, you're supposed to be in progression. You have to be moving through circumstances and gaining more understanding, see, of the peace of the spiritual path. Not the stress of the human path, because that's all it is for the most part. It's stress coping for the humans, at the human level, okay? Not the progressive level, but just the ordinary day-to-day karmic level, machinery, okay? Paying your dues. Or not having the light at the end of the tunnel, so it's all blues, paying your blues.
Does seeing whatever's happening as, or interpreting whatever's happening as it's supposed to happen, is that an abdication of one's power or one's own intention?
No, that's a way of being okay with the situation, because it's what's happening, so you're okay with it. Like the floor that's here, you're okay with it. You brought yourself here, right? Or something in you enabled you to be here, right? It's still you, but you're in a different place than earlier, say, before you got here. It's just the way it is. It's the path unfolding before you, with or without your permission, with or without your approval, in a manner of speaking. But you're working from prior agreements, so these prior agreements determine per individual what seems to be okay and useful or not.
And so then if we fight the conditions that are...
that you created, you're fighting yourself. So enjoy it. You can beat up on yourself. This could go sour and you beat up on yourself for it. Or this can be great and then you can compliment yourself but just feel good. Just be okay with it. And if we're talking about spiritual practice, then it's really the science of being okay more and more and more. Not tolerant of nonsense, but being okay because you're creating okayness. You're pulling yourself out of, let's say, the unconscious mechanical creation of painful situations that are definitely not okay. Right? And you're not paying attention to that. See? You're just going through it like a machine. Without choice, it seems. So you're not really being okay, you think you're being okay because that's what you were handed. But you were also handed options.
So when somebody acts heroically, is that a rejection of the conditions and a rejection of the okayness of it?
No. No. It's not a rejection or an acceptance of it. It's just how a person is acting. A person might just be doing what they feel they need to do, and others will interpret it as either heroic or cowardly, depending on how they see it. It's relative to perception. It's got nothing to do with the process. You also hear this in many instances throughout, the life pattern. When a person jumps up to do something, it's, I don't even know how I did that. I don't know what moved me to do it. And, whether it's going into a house on fire or, a super wreck, pile up, one of those multiple car wrecks, chain reaction, as happens in fogs and under certain conditions in snow and ice where there's no visibility. Yeah, well, people become what they're capable of. And that means super peeps. But you needed a circumstance to show up, to bring that out in you. That's your potential, but you didn't know you had that potential. You didn't know you could lift a car up under certain conditions, and we all can. Under the right conditions, we have superhuman strength. And superhuman knowledge under the right conditions.
So who finds themselves in those situations? People who want to do right, or people who are just called seemingly randomly?
Any way you want to think about it. When you're in that situation, man, you do what you have to do. And if you have goodness in your heart, and you have a willingness or an impulse to help, right? And you help yourself, of course, and help others, then circumstances may come to prove your sincerity in respect to that, because it may be unproven or untested. You may have the desire, but it may be untested. In some cases, some people need to be tested, and to be given the honor of the test. See?
So, how much difference is there between, let's say, lifting a car off of somebody and opening to higher teachings or higher wisdom?
Why would there be a difference? Who would assert that there's a difference? There's no difference. You're just here. And it's up to you to deal with what you've agreed to from the beginning of this life. And often people are not conscious of their agreements. That means you're not conscious of your parents, and you're not conscious of their parents, and that how you are part of that debt, see? That purpose, that mission. See?
So is spiritual practice a process of determining what our prior agreements are?
That is part of your practice, is to know who you are and what's coming through you. Yeah, paying attention to that. Sitting and letting the boiling, occur, and the purification occur. The release of karma, tendencies, programs, confusion, self-division, so on and so forth. Negative conditions, letting them just boil off. Because you're coming down into peaceful, true nature, where are the negative conditions? They have to be painted onto what it is. There's nothing there. The spirit. We have to get our intuition working to grasp the truth of spirit. Yeah. Not the game of using the word conceptually for political purposes. Well, I'm spiritual in this way. My spiritual. Nobody's spiritual. Everybody is spirit at that level. And it's up to them to be true to what that is. That's a radical form of immaterialism. And that doesn't mean we don't handle the material. Yes, we do have an agreement to be here in the material, but we also have the potential of handling and managing it from a spiritual, not religious, not what you believe, but spiritual. That means a non-material reality, which then is being true to the nature of the heart, nothing outside of that.
Does the feeling of having a mission or a calling, is that by way of tuning into one's agreements?
It may be, or it may be a projection. People can have no calling, but they're doing the right thing because they reach that point where they're being used by the Spirit, or the inner reality, the super, to do a service, to do, let's say, I won't call it a kindness, but goodness, to do goodness in the field. Whether you like it or not, it's the goodness has to be done. So it's really not thinking about it, it's not an intellectual process in any way, shape, or form. It's something coming from in, so I call it the way of the inside out.
And so does spiritual practice allow, let's say, the debris and the things in the way to get out of the way, so we're able to...
Spiritual practice is basically from breathing light. It's not a heavy-duty thought process. It's just recovering in the moment your basic light nature, super breath. Spirit, breath. Breath and spirit. You look in the dictionary, you look up spirit, it's breath. You look up genius, you see it's the same thing. Spirit, breath. The breath of spirit.